mate. What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. They're laboratory mice. They're keen, cast, and slice. They're Pinky and the Brain. Brain, 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 brain.
My guest today has had an amazing career as a voice actor, providing voices for a ton of cartoon series, with probably his best-known character being from my favorite cartoon of all time. Joining me on the phone is Maurice LaMarche, the voice behind The Brain from Pinky and the Brain, which is now available on DVD. Maurice, thanks for taking the time to be on the show today.
Greetings, Joe. And I want you to know, because you've had me on your show, I will spare you when I take over the world.
Well, I appreciate that.
Okay, Brain, that's enough now. It's time for me to talk in my own voice. Give me back my body. Hey, this is what I really sound like. Nothing like the Brain. How you doing, Joe?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good today. Thanks for having me on the show.
Now, as I mentioned, I guess, the Brain is probably the voice, I guess, that you're best known for, but you've done work on just about every cartoon for the last 20 years. You used to do stand-up, right?
I did, and you know, it was a very lucky segue into this voiceover thing that happened almost by accident. I really wasn't looking for it. My friend Frank Welker, who at the time still did a fair bit of stand-up, but was really, you know, he'd already made his bones in the voiceover business and was known as like the new kid who could do everything. You know, circa 1985, he'd already been doing it 15 years, so he wasn't really the new kid, but he was the established kid, the boy wonder. You know, I looked at his career and thought, wow, that's really cool. You know, he doesn't have to go on the road that much because he gets to make a really nice living staying in town. And, you know, it was actually far better than a really nice living. He was just a very humble guy. And so I was on stage at the Comedy Store one night, and the voiceover agent from the William Morris Agency was in the audience, and she came up to me and said, you know, you could probably, with all the impressions you do, you know, make yourself a nice little side career doing voiceovers. And I thought, sounds okay. So she had me in for auditions, and it took literally about a year before I got my first job. But, you know, she had faith in me, and lo and behold, I booked this Inspector Gadget cartoon as the chief, and then I went right into Ghostbusters, and it pretty much hasn't stopped since 1985. And I'm just hoping I can continue to fool them another 20, 30, 40 years, and then I can retire.
So you were Chief Quimby on Inspector Gadget?
I was in the second season. The first season, I think it was Canadian actor named Chris Wiggins. But I was for the last 22 episodes, I was the chief, yeah.
You know what? Growing up, that was one of my favorites. And another thing I loved growing up was Get Smart. What was it like working with Don Adams?
Well, that was the coolest thing about getting this job was, you know, I thought to myself, how great is this? I went in, first day, we sat down, and I was nervous. I'm a perspirer. So I'm sitting there sweating in the chair. You know, the studio is 58 degrees, and I'm still sweating because here I am in the presence of this comedy legend and my friend Frank and, you know, and me and a little girl who was playing Penny. The previous Penny, Cree Summer, who's now, you know, very successful singer, and still does voiceover work. She was a child actress, and her voice had broken, so she'd actually stopped playing children. And there was a new little girl playing Penny. Anyway, we're sitting there, and Adams starts with all these stories about the making of Get Smart. And it ended up being where we'd record for, you know, 3 pages, and then Don would, you know, sort of enforce a break by saying, you know, I remember the time that Rickles and I were chained to a wall together. Doing an episode of Get Smart, and Don played my best friend, and he doesn't know I'm a spy, and we're chained to the wall, and we can't get the take because Don and I keep cracking each other up. So they left us chained to the wall. They said, that's lunch, and nobody came and unchained us. They came back. An hour later, we were still chained and still laughing. You know, and every day, every week, we'd record an episode, and it would be, you know, half an hour of actual recording and 2 hours of Don telling stories. So I probably know every Get Smart story there is.
So you've kind of got like the DVD commentary of Get Smart in your head.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, the DVD commentary on Get Smart is old news to me. I got it in 1985.
That's
and then
great.
right out of that into Ghostbusters, working with the great Lorenzo Music, and again my friend Frank Welker, in Arsenio Hall. It was again one of those things where I'm hanging out with one of the funniest comedy writers in town, who did a complete about face and decided enough with writing comedy and writing sitcoms like Newhart, and which he created, and Rhoda, which he also created. He just wanted to take it easy and do voiceovers with that great sort of laconic voice that he used for Peter Venkman and for Garfield the cat, and just laughing. I mean, that's all we did was laugh.
You know what? I since you're talking about the real Ghostbusters, there's a question that I've had in my head because these are the cartoons I grew up with, and there's something that maybe now somebody can give me an answer about. What was the deal with the real Ghostbusters and then that other Ghostbusters cartoon with the two guys and a monkey?
Well, the cartoon with the two guys and the monkey was, believe it or not, came first.
Oh, it did?
And so that's why we had to call our show The Real Ghostbusters, because they were on the air first, and there was a whole lawsuit thing that could have happened if we didn't change the name, even though we were based on the movie Ghostbusters.
The Ghostbusters everybody knew.
Yeah, and there was, I believe before there was a cartoon, there was a live-action Saturday morning CBS show called Ghostbusters with, I think, Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch, and Michael Gross told the story, when we were recording of, them coming to the name. They still hadn't decided what to call the movie because they couldn't pick a name that was, they didn't know if they could call it Ghostbusters because of that TV show. And they finally called legal and said, what are we calling the movie? And they go, well, we don't know if we can use Ghostbusters yet. And he said, well, listen to this. And he held his hand out, and they were filming a crowd scene in the movie, the famous crowd scene where everybody's shouting, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters, as they're going after Gozer the Gazarian. And he said, I think we have to go with Ghostbusters. And he hung up the phone. And so they called the movie Ghostbusters, but then our little cartoon show, they decided to just call it The Real Ghostbusters to differentiate it from the cartoon version of that Larry Storch, Forrest Tucker show.
Well, which is nice, though, because I like the little in-your-face with adding The Real.
Yes, The Real Ghostbusters. Not that fake show with Larry Storch. So that's that. Now you have now you know the rest of the story.
Well, thank you, Paul. Now, is it true that you're the third person in history to be the official voice of Popeye?
I was. The first guy was a guy named Bill Costello, he was a vaudeville performer named Red Pepper Sam, and I think he did about a dozen of the first Popeye cartoons, and he was the guy that had the sort of more mumbly, oh, yeah, we'll get you right now, you son of a gun, oh. And then he went off to be in the service during the war, and while he was away, Jack Mercer, who was an animator, who always did the storyboards imitating Red Pepper Sam, Bill Costello, he stepped in and started to do it just as a temp. And then Bill Costello started asking for more money when he came back, and they went, you know what, we're pretty happy with Mercer. We've done a bunch of cartoons with Mercer. So Mercer was it for 50 years, and then you've got my 13 episodes of Popeye and the Sun. And now Billy West is the fourth person. He did the DVD CGI Popeye cartoon from 2 years ago. So there have only been 4 Popeyes, and I'm proud to say I'm one of them.
That's pretty cool. And then one of the things I didn't realize was you're also the voice of Toucan Sam.
Tommy on nose, it always knows where the residual checks are. Yes, I took over that from Paul Frees when Paul Frees passed away, sadly. In 1985 was a real bumper year for me. I kind of went from zero to, hey, this is what you do. You're a voiceover guy. And Paul passed away, and I did actually his last or second last commercial with him, but I never met him. He was one of those guys that had his own studio, and he recorded stuff separately. So when I went in, I played the other character. I played this sort of Doc Brown, Back to the Future kind of scientist bird, who said, "Hey, look, Toucan, my bird bot can eat up Fruit Loops just like you." And but for timing, and just because I just love riffing, I read in the Toucan lines in the Toucan Sam impression I've been doing since I was a little kid. So when Paul did pass away, they went, well, why don't we get that guy who who read along with himself and played both parts, that psychotic guy. And so that's, you know, they had a big search, but I apparently I was at the front of the running for most of the time.
Now, you said you've been doing it since you were a kid. You know, one of the questions I was wondering, and I've always kind of wondered with voice actors, and especially impressionists, how do you develop a voice? I mean, like I know the brain is based on Orson Welles. Did you just have it in you? Could you just do Orson Welles, or did that take some working on for a while?
Well, Orson Welles came from somebody giving me. Actually, it was Phil Proctor from the Firesign Theater, who gave me this great piece of tape on New Year's Eve of 1984, and it was this tape of Welles having this in studio sort of hissy fit.
I have heard that tape.
Yes, the famous Findus frozen foods.
That is a great tape.
Yeah, which is the British equivalent of Bird's Eye, Finders. And he's doing this series of commercials, and he's, you know, for your listeners who may not have heard it, he's lambasting them for their idiotic direction of him. Now, when I first listened to it, I thought, oh my goodness, how can he talk to these people? Then I realized, wait a second, this guy started his career at the age of 26 with making arguably the greatest movie of all time. And here are these guys telling him to emphasize the word "in" at the beginning of a sentence. And I thought to myself, maybe he's right, you know? And the longer I work in voiceover, the more I realize he is. Nobody knows what they want, except for the directors I work with, of course, and who may be listening. And so I just began to listen to that thing in my car. There were so many fabulous verbal nuances and turns of phrase, because he was such a brilliant man, that I just, you know, I come at a voice or an impression one of two ways. Either I so admire the character or the star that I want to emulate them, or I have such contempt for them that I want to ridicule them and mock them. Those are my only two motivations for working whatever it is I do to make somebody else's voice or an approximation thereof bubble forth from my larynx. And with Welles, it was a little bit of both, but then at the end it was just that grudging admiration of how bright the man was. So when he says, "You can't emphasize in before July. Come on, fellas, you're losing your heads. I wouldn't direct any living actor like this in Shakespeare, the way you do this." You know, and he says, well, how does he? He goes, "No money is worth this," and he walks off. So
it's a classic, and I actually have to. You do that great, and you did a really nice job of cleaning it up on the DVD feature on Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, we had to, of course. You know, we couldn't say what we were actually offering to do. But you said, "Get me a jury and show me how you can say 'in July,' and I'll make cheese for you."
That's a very nice save. and I appreciate that too for the FCC and this.
My pleasure.
Now, as far with Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs, well, how did you get involved in those shows?
I was lucky to already be involved with. I kind of got in on the floor when Steven Spielberg decided that he wanted to bring back funny cartoons. Because up to that point, a lot of the cartoons that were on the air, 90% of them, were kind of glorified commercials for action figures. And Steven came along and said, I want to revive the whole Warner cartoon tradition of cultural references and sort of sly winking at the camera kind of stuff, and cartoons that actually made you laugh. And so first was Tiny Toons, and I was just told, I was going to have this audition with Andrea Romano at Warner Brothers, and she had previously been at Hanna-Barbera, so she knew me. So I was lucky I got in. I got to be the voice of Dizzy Devil on Tiny Toons for 65 episodes, which was a shredder of a voice. It was, basically it was Taz, filtered through Howie Mandel's gremlin voice. He was kind of purple, and he had a beanie on.
Oh, I know Dizzy Devil.
And then right off, we weren't even finished with Tiny Toons, and they started having these auditions for this new show, Animaniacs, and Steven and Tom Ruger wanted to take it to the next level and come up with characters that aren't just sort of shadows of the existing Warner Brothers characters, but they're sort of their own universe. And where Pinky and the Brain was concerned, I was the first and last guy to read for it. I went in. I was the first audition at 9 in the morning. On the Monday morning, we auditioned, and apparently they booked me on the spot. I did not know that. I sweated it out like everybody else and waited a couple of weeks to hear from my agent. But yeah, it was, and it was me using that Orson Welles impression and just using what I had, using anything that came to me. And when I saw that character sketch, I just went, wow, the furrowed brow, the hooded eyelids, and then the keen intelligence that's obviously in the eyes. I thought that looks like they've drawn Orson Welles. So I just did the Orson Welles voice, and it was apparently what they had in mind for it too. So it worked.
You know, I'll tell you what was so great about Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain was, I mean, at the time when they came out, I was about 15, and the great thing was, I thought they were hilarious at 15, and I used to watch it with my dad, who was almost 40, and he loved it.
Yeah, well, you know, I was 15 at the time too, and you know, I'm only 26 now. I have pants that are 26. But yeah, well, again, you know, there was never, with these guys, these writers and these artists and Tom Ruegger and Spielberg at the helm, there was never any attempt to find the target. Who's our target audience? You know, they didn't have those network discussions because Steven was in charge and he'd given Tom full reign and just said, make the funniest cartoons you can. And that's all they wanted to do, and that's all they ever did was, well, let's just make funny cartoons. Let's do stuff that makes us laugh. And since, you know, writers and animators are just big kids at heart, they hit all the notes. You know, they hit the kid notes, they hit the adult notes, and, you know, it just works. And I don't know if we'll ever see it like again.
Well, you probably are the only cartoon in history to have references to both Helter Skelter and Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, at least any cartoon that aired at 4 in the afternoon.
Exactly.
You know, yeah. Yeah, I mean, The Simpsons gets away with a lot more. They have a bigger budget. They have, you know, 3 times the writing staff, and they're on in prime time. But, you know, I think in terms of a daytime show, we were very lucky, and we were very sly.
Oh, I remember asking my dad, who the heck is Joyce DeWitt? Because there was a Joyce DeWitt joke, and you know, at 14, I didn't know who she was. I now know. I learned who Joyce DeWitt was from Pinky and the Brain. Well,
and I'm sure Joyce is happy about that and owes us her residual checks from Three's Company.
Now you and Rob Paulson were just at the San Diego Comic-Con, right?
We were just treated to having a whole panel around Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, and we got to have a terrific autograph session that went, thank God, a half hour longer than anybody anticipated, and we went on, and I thought, you know, because they bring you on from a different set of rooms, so you know, I'm backstage more or less, and I'm thinking, God, just please let the first 3 rows be you know, as long as there's some faces in the first 3 rows. This show's been off the air for 9 years, 12 years, 11 years, whatever it is. You know, nobody knows who we are anymore. That generation's grown up. Nobody cares. You know, all that insecure performer stuff. And I walked in, and I almost wanted to cry when I saw the room was full. We had 1,000 to 1,100 people in the room.
Oh, that's great.
Standing along all of the walls, and they told me they had to turn away 300 to 400 people.
No kidding.
And we were full. You know, we were full to capacity, and we had, you know, again, that autograph session ran a half hour longer than it was supposed to, and you know, and the DVD, they can't keep the DVD on the shelves. I was actually in Borders the other day, and I was looking around for it. You know, I was spending a gift certificate, and I said, "Do you have the Pinky and the Brain DVD?" And they said that no, we can't keep it on the shelves.
You know what? It took me a couple stores to find it.
Yep, and it's just they're selling out on it. It's still in the top 30 on Amazon.com, and it's been out for a month. Plus, in pre-sales, it was working its way into the top 20. For 2 weeks, it was in the top 5. So this show still resonates for people. The kids that grew up and enjoy it now as adults are buying it, and you know, and the young adults that liked it and the college students are showing it to their kids now. My son loves it, you know, and he was an infant when we were doing Pinky and the Brain, and he loves sitting there watching it with me.
Oh, it's great stuff. You know, I saw somebody posted a couple videos on YouTube.com from the Comic-Con thing, and somebody posted Rob Paulson singing the entire Countries of the World song. live there, and the real question I have is, can you still sing Brain's Brainstem song?
You know, I don't have Rob's capacity. To me, Rob is a musical phenom. He hears a tune once, he remembers it, he locks it in, he remembers every lyric he ever read. I mean, he can do that tune. He didn't practice. You can be having dinner with him 3 years from now and just go, what about that world song, Rob? And he'll go, United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama. You know, that's as far as I can get in the song. As for Brainstem, I can only get to hippocampus, neural node, brainstem, and that's it. I remember the first verse of every song I ever heard. When it came time for us to sing, you know, because Jess got up and did his state song, and then I got up, and everybody thought I was going to do Brainstem, and instead I belched the Blue Danube Waltz, because I'm the belcher for Yakos, for the Yakko, the Great Wacko Roddy. Not Yakko, excuse me, Wacko. So I came out and just went, and you know, I think the surprise of that got quite a chuckle.
No standing ovation on that?
No standing ovation. People were too busy looking for buckets to throw up into.
Is there any word on the release date for Volume 2?
December 5th.
Really?
Yep, it was just announced yesterday, December 5th. Pinky and the Brain Volume 2 is called Ponder This. And I don't recall what the title to the Animaniacs Volume 2 is, but they're both being released on the same day, December 5th, in time for Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Festivus.
The Festivus for the rest of us.
Make a heck of a stocking stuffer for the tunatic in your family.
Will Volume 2 include the lost Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain episodes?
There are no plans at this point to put on Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain that I know of, because Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain didn't actually happen. That was all a dream I had for about 13 weeks. In fact, I'm amazed you even know about it, so I must still be asleep.
That's I guess, would you say that's when Pinky and the Brain jumped the shark?
Well, you know, I would say hang glided over the shark. You know, we tried our best to make that a funny show, and we tried to keep the whole dynamic alive, and I love Cree, and there were things about it that worked, but it was like the famous Pinky and the Brain and Larry episode of Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, where, you know, there was this whole push that when we were going into prime time, well, we need to expand the cast. We need to make the show more relatable and give them a whole family of people to relate to. It was like, well, why do it now? You know, we're not even going on. We've done prime time and we're off the air. You know, why do we need to, you know, pin a tail on the Mona Lisa? You know, it just didn't quite work. There was no reason for us to be in Elmira's house, and it gave Brain two people to be annoyed at. But, you know, it made Pinky look smart, you know, and we didn't need that, I think. The dynamic between Pinky and the Brain was, you know, that they have this abiding friendship that's just based on loyalty, and there was no reason to bring in another element. So,
is there
that being said, I'm sure I'll be made a fool of within a year when they release Elmira and the Brain.
Just for the extra buck, right?
Exactly.
Is there any chance of those two characters ever coming back?
You know, stranger things have happened. I mean, you know, we have the phenomenon of Family Guy, and now that has gone on to touch Futurama.
I heard about that.
I'm thrilled about, because I'm a series regular on that show. We've just put the first 4 episodes down on tape. It'll be, Futurama. It'll be a Futurama movie, but it'll also air on Comedy Central in 4 parts. Actually, it'll air in 16 parts, but we've just done the first 4, and that was strictly based on DVD sales and strong ratings on Adult Swim. So,
hey, and Pinky and the Brain's flying off the shelves. See,
if our numbers are strong enough, maybe Warner Brothers will look at those numbers and go, you know, we had a moneymaker here, and let's make more of them. You know,
as far as
that would be great, and yet you can't count your chickens before the moss grows on the wrong side of the tree, or whatever that expression.
Now, as far as Futurama goes, are all the originals returning?
Everybody's returning. Although the entire original cast has been assembled. A goodly portion of our original writers are back writing the scripts, and Matt's of course on board, and is in fact Matt may be a little more hands-on now than he was towards the end. I mean, he came to the recording sessions, and he's been very, very, not that he was ever standoffish. Everything went by Matt, but there came a little while there where Matt didn't come to records and things like that. Now Matt was at the recording sessions for these first four, and we all just put our heads together and came up with it's a great story. The first quadrilogy is a really terrific story. I can't tell you anything about it. I had to sign a secrecy agreement, but I will tell you that at the end of the first four, you'll shed a tear. It's really terrific.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, looking forward to that. And
yeah.
Is there anything else you have in the works you want to mention?
Well, I've got a nice marinara sauce right now on the stove, and it's just been simmering for 2 days. I think it's going to be yummy. No, I'm always doing stuff, and yet I'm the worst self-promoter in the world. I can never come out and say, yes, I've got 2 episodes of this and that. I will tell you that I get to be in the season premiere of The Simpsons coming up for Halloween, the Treehouse of Horror. I'm in the second episode of the trilogy, playing, of all things, I don't know how they came up with this, Orson Welles. Without revealing too much, I'll just say it's a period piece, and a certain radio address that caused national hysteria is reflected back on how did that affect The Simpsons. So I've got that coming on the air. I'm doing an episode of The Simpsons this week that you won't see for a year, so there's really not much point in plugging that. but I am, and and I'm currently the voice of American Airlines, and that seems to be ongoing in the commercial world, as well as Hoover Vacuums. And I just started a new show called Tack in the Land of Juju, and I get to work with Hal Sparks on that. He's a funny guy, and and there's just always stuff, always stuff coming down the pike in the world of animation for me.
Hey, well, Maurice, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. It's really been a pleasure. And before you go, could you do me 2 little tiny favors?
I will endeavor to do my best if you'll just let me plug Barnyard, the movie, as well. I forgot.
Sure, absolutely.
Theaters right now. Barnyard, the movie. I play Ig, the Jersey cow. He's one of the 3 cows that kind of takes Otis on a little side trip, and he's the one that sounds a little like Robert De Niro. But yes, and what favor can I do you, my friend?
Well, I would love it if you could do for me maybe a promo. But see this, I've got you on the phone now, and I know this might be just me being a pesty talk show host. But could I get you to do 2 for me?
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Would you do a promo for the show as both the Brain, and then can I get another one from Toucan Sam?
Absolutely. Greetings, my friends. Well, okay, here it is again. From the top. I'm trying to plan my improv here. Let me just. Okay, 2 seconds. Greetings, my friends. This is the Brain of Pinky and the Brain. You're listening to the Joe Cook program. You're also listening to subliminal messages, which will allow me to take over the world. Yes!
That is fantastic.
All right. And now here's one is Toucan Sam.
All right.
Although I don't think I can say Toucan Sam or Fruit Loops, so I'll just say, greetings, my friends. Follow your nose to the Joe Cook program.
I love it. Thank you very much, Maurice.
He has no fruity flavors. No, I don't know what the hell I was saying. All right, Joe.
Thank you very much.
On the show. It's been fun.
Thanks a lot. Take care. You have a good day.
Thank you. You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.